Hello, and welcome to using the polling tool in Blackboard Collaborate. The polling tool is a really fun way to engage your students in any lecture material or presentations that you might be doing. It's also a good way to gauge whether or not your students are following along in the content that you are presenting. The polling tool is found in the Share Files tool, so we are in our Collaborate toolbox here. That's the third icon to the right. It has an arrow pointing to the right inside of a square, so just click on the Share Content tool. If you scroll down below primary and secondary contact, we have under secondary contact here, we have the actual polling tool itself. Now, the polling tool is not a quizzing tool. You can only ask one question at a time. You can't do a quiz on this. It doesn't work well for a quiz. There is a polling report that you have access to after your session along with your attendance roster. It is available, and you can type a question in there and it will record which student provided you with which answer, but it can be a little tricky to use, and it's very time consuming because you can only, again, ask one question at a time in the poll. You cannot set up the poll ahead of time like a quiz and have 10 questions already prepared. So just keep that in mind when you're using the polling tool. It's really intended more for just kind of polling the class, kind of getting a feel for where students are and in the content that you're currently presenting. So in order to use the polling tool, you can ask yes or no or true or false, and you can ask a multiple choice question with up to 5 different distractors. So let's start with a yes or no choice. I can do a poll one of 2 ways. You can, of course, ask your question in here. So I'll just ask them if they're having a good day. So I have to type the question in, and with the yes and no question type, this is like a true or false, I can just simply start, and the poll pops up here. Now, the students can answer the poll by simply clicking, right? They can just click on an actual response. If the poll, some students may say to you, hey, the poll's in my way of what I'm trying to answer. Maybe you have a document up or something like that. You can tell the students to go ahead and click the X. This will close the poll. And down at the bottom of the screen, when they're ready to select their answer, they can just click this small graph right here, and it will pop the poll back up. This tool will be used by you as a moderator as well when you're using the poll for multiple questions. So now that everyone has answered their questions, I'm going to show them all their responses. So now all of the students can actually see the responses. They can see how many students answered yes. Everybody did pretty good today. Everybody's having a good day. That's fantastic. We now want to close this poll for use later on. So I close the poll and I can move on with my content. Later on, I may ask the students another question. I may ask a verbal form of the question. And so I can put the poll up like this, and I want to get the responses again. I hit clear. This now removes all of the responses, resets my poll, but you can see that my question is still the same. I can unhide the responses, and now students have the ability to answer the poll question again. So now the students are answering the poll. Once I'm done taking the poll, everyone's answered it. I click show responses, and now when it turns purple, this means everyone can see what's happening. But the problem here is that I can only ask this single question right here. So if I want to change the question, I have to stop or end the poll, go back to my polling tool, and I have to type in a new question. And this can be very time consuming. The same thing with a multiple choice. I can select a multiple choice. I have up to 5 distractors that I can select. And I have to type in my question, submit the poll, allow students to answer it, and then I would have to come back, end the poll, rewrite a new question. So for quizzes, that would be very time consuming and disruptive. Another way to do this that works very well is to use your PowerPoint or presentation as the actual questions themselves. And so a good practice is just simply, I just prepare at the beginning of class before class starts, answer the question on the slide by selecting below, and then I just put A, B, C, D, and E. Click Start. I just leave that so they can't answer it, and then I close the poll. Once the poll is closed, the students cannot see it, but it's still active down here. So as the moderator, I have the ability to pop this poll up at any point during my lecture or during my presentation. So now I'm going to share a file. I have a PowerPoint here that just has 2 simple questions on it. So I may be giving my PowerPoint and I'm giving my presentation, and I get a, I have this question pop up. We're in the multiple choice, so I'm going to go to my multiple choice question. So I have the poll set in multiple choice form. I would normally have a few slides in a PowerPoint presentation, and then about every 3 or 4 slides, I usually add 3 review questions. And I pop up the poll. When I get to those review slides, I select clear, and now my students can answer the poll. I say, okay, question number 1, and I may read the question out loud, and the students can select their answer. Now, if the students are unable to see the poll, you can see that the poll box is covering the slide. You can close the poll box, and the students can do the same thing. They can close the poll box, make their selection, and then they can open the poll there. So hopefully our students will answer the poll soon. Someone has. If you're not sure who's answering the poll, click on your roster tool, and I can see here that Wendy has already answered the poll, but Elizaveta, Michelle, and Misha have not. Okay, Elizaveta, Michelle, Misha, let's go ahead and answer this poll so we can see what everyone likes. So I can call them out. I can see that they weren't able to answer the poll. Right? Now they're answering the poll. So if you have students that are slacking, it tells you up here, slacking. If you have students that are not answering the poll right away, you can look up here. It tells you how many. Always subtract 1 for yourself if you're not answering the poll. So right now, the only person who has not answered the poll is myself as the moderator. But everyone else has answered the poll. We're going to show the responses, and it looks like Central Campus has won this particular poll. That seems to be the favorite campus. All right, so now I'm going to clear this poll and close it. I want to ask that true or false question. So I'm going to go to my polling. I'm going to stop polling here, and I'm going to switch to a yes or no question. Same thing. Answer the question on the slide. Click start. I'm going to move to the slide that's just a yes or no question. Again, if it's covering, doesn't matter that the students are answering it. I can close this. I can open it back up. I see that I'm the only one who has, I'm down to 1. So I click show responses, and now everybody can see the responses of the poll. Select clear, close my poll, and if I had another true or false question, I could then just pop the poll up again and click show responses. The students can then answer the next question. So this is a really great practice. It takes a little bit of setup ahead of time. You have to build your questions into your presentation, but it is a very seamless way to use the polling tool to kind of break up a lecture, get students to answer, and let you know that they are on track with what you are presenting to them. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to use the polling tool in Blackboard Collaborate, and have a great class.